This wasn't just punishment, it was a power move disguised as parenting. And the truth, way darker than anyone expected. And it gets worse and weirder. Imagine being 17 years old and coming home from school to find your bags packed on the front porch. Your house keys confiscated. Your room locked. Your dad standing there with his arms crossed like a bouncer at a club you used to live in. "You're suspended," he said, "from this house." Even my brain was buffering, which is rare, because teenage brains usually run on pure chaos and audacity. According to my dad, I was being punished for disrespect and breaking house rules. Standard parent stuff, right? Grounded, no phone, extra chores. But that's only the version he told everyone else. Because what he actually did wasn't discipline. It was exile. And here's the thing about extreme punishments: they don't teach lessons. They teach you who someone becomes when they have all the power. Because here's the part he conveniently left out. And this is where the story gets ridiculous. So what did I do to deserve being suspended from my own home? Did I crash the car? No. Did I steal? No. Did I burn the house down? Obviously not, because I was being kicked out of it. Here's what happened. I disagreed with him. Out loud. In front of his girlfriend. My dad had been dating this woman for about 6 months. Let's call her Rose because, well, you'll see why. Rose had opinions about everything. How I dressed, how I talked, how I ate cereal. Yes, cereal. She told me I chewed too loudly, and it was disrespectful to the household. I'm sorry, since when is eating Frosted Flakes a human rights violation? So one night at dinner, she made another comment about my attitude problem. And I said, maybe I wouldn't have an attitude if you stopped treating me like a problem. Boom. My dad's face went red. Not because I was wrong, but because I said it in front of her. It's like watching someone choose their ego over their own kid in real time. But the craziest part, this wasn't about respect. Because this next detail changes everything you think you know about control. The next morning, I woke up to my dad standing in my doorway. "Pack a bag," he said. "You're suspended from this house for 2 weeks." I laughed. I genuinely thought he was joking. Suspended, like from school. "Exactly like school," he said. "You broke the rules. There are consequences. You're not welcome here until you learn respect." I stared at him. Where am I supposed to go? That's your problem to figure out. And just like that, my own father kicked me out. Not forever, not technically, but long enough to make a point. And that point was, I'm in charge and you're disposable. Some parenting experts would call this authoritarian discipline. I call it emotional eviction with a deadline. Because he didn't just punish me. He made me homeless to prove he could. And here's where it gets darker. Because this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, it was planned. Here's what I didn't know. My dad and Rose had discussed this for days. I found out later from my younger brother that they'd been talking about teaching me a lesson all week. Rose had apparently suggested it. If she doesn't respect you, she doesn't deserve to live under your roof. And my dad agreed. He didn't think about where I'd sleep. He didn't think about school or safety or the fact that I was still a minor. He just thought, this will show her. And you know what? It did show me. It showed me that his relationship with Rose mattered more than his relationship with me. It showed me that he valued authority over empathy. It showed me that love, in his world, came with terms and conditions. I ended up staying with my best friend's family. Her mom opened the door, saw my duffel bag, and didn't ask questions. She just hugged me and said, "You're staying as long as you need." That woman, a stranger, basically, showed me more parental love in 5 seconds than my dad had in 5 years. It's like being disowned by your architect, and then finding out a neighbor's been building you a better house the whole time. But here's the detail everyone ignores in these situations. And this is the part that still messes with my head. For 2 weeks, my dad didn't call, didn't text, didn't check in. I was 17, suspended from my own home, sleeping on someone else's couch. And my father didn't care enough to make sure I was alive. My friend's mom asked me one night, "Has your dad reached out?" I shook my head. She looked horrified. What kind of parent does that? And I didn't have an answer. Because I was still trying to convince myself this was discipline and not abandonment. But here's the thing about silence. It's not neutral. Silence is a choice. And his silence screamed, "You're not worth my energy until you submit." Meanwhile, Rose was posting on Facebook pictures of her and my dad on date nights. Captions like, "So grateful for this man and our peaceful home." Our peaceful home. The home she helped kick me out of. People think the worst part of betrayal is the action. But it's not. It's the performance that comes after. It's watching someone celebrate the space you used to occupy. And my dad, he was celebrating. But here's what broke me more than the silence. It's what happened when I finally came back. 2 weeks later, I got a text. "You can come home now. I expect an apology and better behavior moving forward." No, I missed you. No, are you okay? Just conditions. I walked into that house like I was entering enemy territory. My dad was sitting on the couch with Rose. They both looked at me like I was a guest who'd overstayed their welcome. "Well," my dad said. "Well, what?" "Your apology." I stood there, duffel bag still on my shoulder, and I had a choice. I could apologize for something I didn't do wrong. I could shrink myself to fit back into a house that didn't want me. Or I could tell the truth. I chose truth. "I'm not apologizing," I said. His face went red again. "Excuse me. I didn't do anything wrong. I disagreed with Rose, that's it. And you kicked me out for 2 weeks like I was trash." Rose gasped, literally gasped. Like I'd just committed a crime by pointing out reality. My dad stood up. "If you can't show respect, you can leave again." And that's when I realized. This wasn't about me learning respect. This was about him conditioning me to never challenge him again. This was about control, dressed up as a consequence. And I wasn't playing anymore. "Fine," I said, "I'll leave." And I walked out. Again. But this time, it was my choice. But this is where the story takes a turn no one saw coming. Not even me. Because what I did next, it exposed everything. I called my mom. Now, my parents had been divorced for years, and my mom lived 2 states away. But when I told her what happened, she lost it. He did what? I explained everything. The suspension, the silence, the demand for an apology. And my mom said something I'll never forget. "That's not parenting, that's abuse." I'd never thought of it that way. Because abuse in my mind was hitting, screaming, obvious stuff. But my mom explained it differently. Abuse is using your power to make someone feel worthless, and that's exactly what he did. She called my dad that night. I don't know exactly what she said, but I heard it was volcanic. She threatened legal action, custody changes, public exposure. And suddenly, my dad wanted to talk. He called me the next day. Not to apologize, but to clear up misunderstandings. He said I took things the wrong way. That he was just trying to teach me responsibility. That I was being dramatic. There it is again. The playbook. When people get called out, they don't own it. They rewrite history and make you the problem for remembering it correctly. It's like burning someone's house down and then handing them a gas can and saying, "See, you're part of the problem." But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. And it's the question I wish I'd asked sooner. Looking back, this wasn't the first time my dad had used power to punish me. It was just the most extreme. When I was 14, He took my bedroom door off the hinges because I slammed it too much. When I was 15, he made me eat dinner in the garage because I talked back. When I was 16, he canceled my birthday party because I forgot to take out the trash. The punishments were never proportional to the crime. They were designed to humiliate, to break me down, to remind me that in his house, I had no power. And here's the thing about growing up with that. You start to believe you deserve it. You start to think love is conditional, that you have to earn basic dignity, that your worth is tied to your obedience. Psychologists call this authoritarian parenting. I call it training someone to accept mistreatment as normal, because that's exactly what it does. It teaches you that the people who love you are allowed to hurt you. And when you grow up believing that, you tolerate it everywhere. In friendships, in relationships, in jobs. You think, well, at least they're not suspending me from existence. And that bar is in hell. And here's the detail that makes this even more twisted. Because I wasn't the only one he did this to. I have a younger brother. And after I left, I started checking in with him more. Turns out, my dad had been doing similar stuff to him. Different punishments, same energy. He made my brother sleep outside in a tent for a week because he didn't appreciate what he had. He confiscated all his books because he was reading too much and not being social enough. He forced him to write a 10-page essay on respect after he rolled his eyes once. My brother was 14, and he was being psychologically tortured for being a teenager. When I asked him why he never told anyone, he said, "I thought it was normal. Dad said all good parents discipline their kids." And that broke my heart, because he'd been gaslit into thinking abuse was love. That cruelty was care. That fear was respect. And my dad, he was proud of it. He'd tell his friends, "My kids know not to mess with me. I run a tight ship." A tight ship. Like we were sailors, and he was a captain. Not a father. A commander. And we weren't his children. We were his subordinates. One therapist I talked to later said, "Some parents don't raise kids. They train soldiers for a war that doesn't exist." And that hit me like a freight train. Because that's exactly what he did. But here's the question I had to ask myself. And it's the one that changed everything. Why did he do it? What kind of father suspends his own kid from home? And the answer I found wasn't comforting. But it was honest. My dad didn't do this because I was bad. He did it because he felt powerless. His career was struggling. His relationship with Rose was shaky. He was aging, stressed, and losing control of his life. And when people feel powerless in their own lives, they grab power wherever they can. And the easiest place to grab it, from people who can't fight back. His kids. We were small, dependent, stuck. And he used that. He turned us into emotional punching bags so he could feel like a king in his own castle. But here's the thing. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean you have to forgive them. It just means you stop blaming yourself. Because for years, I thought I was the problem. I thought I was too sensitive, too difficult, too much. But I wasn't. I was just a kid, trying to survive a parent who confused fear with respect. And I didn't deserve that. Neither did my brother. Neither does anyone. But here's the part that surprised me most. It's what I learned about myself. For months after everything exploded, I was angry. At my dad, at Rose, at myself for not standing up sooner. But then I started therapy. And my therapist asked me something that rewired my brain. What did this experience teach you about the kind of person you don't want to be? And I realized, I don't want to be someone who uses power to hurt people. I don't want to be someone who confuses control with love. I don't want to be someone who punishes people for having boundaries. I don't want to be my dad. And that clarity, that was freedom. Because I stopped trying to get him to understand what he did wrong. I stopped waiting for an apology that was never coming. I stopped shrinking myself to fit into his version of a good daughter. I just let go, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I moved in with my mom full-time. I finished high school. I went to college. And I built a life where I wasn't walking on eggshells, where I didn't have to earn basic human decency, where love wasn't a transaction. And you know what? My dad still doesn't think he did anything wrong. He tells people I chose to leave, that I couldn't handle discipline, that I'm too sensitive. And honestly, I don't care anymore, because his version of the story isn't my responsibility to correct. The truth lives in my bones, and that's enough. Here's the brutal truth they don't tell you about toxic parents. You don't owe them a relationship just because they gave you life. Biology is not a free pass for cruelty. DNA is not a contract that says you have to endure abuse. My dad didn't suspend me from home. He suspended himself from my heart. And I let him stay there. Because here's what I know now. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're broken. It's about who makes space for you instead of kicking you out of it. It's about love that doesn't come with a terms of service agreement. And if someone can't do that, they don't get a seat at your table. Not as a parent, not as anything. And if you think this story is heavy, wait until you hear what happened when he tried to come back into my life 5 years later.